Here we go. Chapter 6 Mental Energy, Appropriate Focus, and Realistic Optimism. Two big concepts here: realistic optimism and concentration focus. We have to focus. If we're not focused, then it becomes a barrier to mental energy. We're not going to get it. But if we do focus, then it actually becomes a blessing to mental energy, and we have more energy. Second thing, realistic optimism is the exact same deal. We need to be real about everything. We need to be real about projects, tasks, our day. We need to be real about it. Then we also need to be optimistic and hopeful, knowing that it's going to work out and that it's going to be better. If we're not realistically optimistic, then it will be a barrier to mental energy. But if we are, it will also give us that mental energy, and we'll be able to tap into that mental energy. 5 key muscles here. 5 key muscles: mental preparation, visualization, positive self-talk. You kind of see positivity affecting the emotions and now the mental game. Effective time management, and then creativity. After that, he's going to give us our whole deal with intermittent recovery. So that stress, intentional stretching to build the capacity like a muscle, but also that recovery. He's going to talk about that. But before we do that, let me look at a couple key words that are going to help us here. First off, the left hemisphere in the limbic system in the brain. It is the seat of language, and it operates in a sequential, step-by-step, time-conscious way, arriving at conclusions based on logical deductions. So it's just the logical piece and part of your brain in the limbic system. Let me look at the right hemisphere here. It's a more visually and spatially adept and has a greater capacity to see things all at once and to relate the parts to the whole. So this is your imaginative part. This is your visualizing part of your brain. You have your right hemisphere, and then you have your left hemisphere. This is important because as information travels through the brainstem up to your prefrontal cortex, another book explains all these concepts, but the brain is a triune brain, if you will. There's the first part, then the second part is the limbic system, and then the third part is the cortex, and then the fourth part is the prefrontal cortex. I said it's 3, but that fourth part is tacked on to the triune brain. But as the information is getting to that prefrontal cortex, it flows through this right hemisphere in the limbic system. And so essentially that imaginative visualizing, that's where the information starts, and then it goes to the logical portion of your brain, that left hemisphere. Very important to understand just that flow of information. Then the next keyword is the creative process. So when we're thinking through creativity, that's one of the key muscles here in the mental source. Let's see this. There's a 5 sequential step that explains creativity. Let's look at it. The first step, and the authors did not come up with this. This is a very wide recognized creative process. The name slips me as to who was the one that developed it, but it's here. Number 1, insight. So when we're creating something, we need insight. The second one is saturation, being saturated. Incubation is the third one. Illumination is the fourth one, and then verification is the fifth process. So there's 5 key processes just to the creative process. Remember, these are just key terms. The last key term here is thinking aside. So Betty Edwards, another author, she talks about this thinking aside. She takes those 5 5-step process, and then she does something with it. She makes a great insight, and she says that the middle 3 have to deals with the right hemisphere, and the first one and the last one deals with the left hemisphere. So all that is when you're going to create something, what you're doing is you're starting out logically, you're bringing in a bunch of data, and then your next 3 processes, saturation, incubation, and illumination, is all right hemisphere stuff. It's all visualization, imagination, feeling it until you get a result. And then what you come up with, you need that 5th process is verification, and that 5th process goes back into the left hemisphere, which is your logical side. So just take that snapshot and let's roll back up to this intermittent recovery here. So intermittent recovery in creativity is a big piece. Evidently, creativity is a huge piece when we're trying to recover, stress and recover in the mental source. Recovery, it requires cycling from left to right hemispheres, he says. So I love this. So in other words, when we're working, especially in our culture where we're so mentally focused and everything's so logical, when we're working so logical in the right hemisphere, in the left hemisphere, we need to periodically shift over to the other side. We need to periodically get into some visualization, imagination, some more creativity, illumination type stuff, and then we can bounce back over, and we so on and so forth. That's how we're going to stretch ourselves, and then that's how we're going to recover as well. Just an amazing, amazing thing. I never thought of it. It's just awesome. I actually find this here for myself. I find this when I go on walks. I tend to slip into the right hemisphere, that visualization, imagination. When I'm working on projects, I tend to always stay in this logical part, but I can never get my result until I go on a walk, and it's like, oh, there's the answer, and it just comes every time. To me, I'm always like, that's a spiritual thing, and it could be, but it's also like it's just a scientific thing as well. But it's cool to figure that out. He also talks about time management. Love this. I love this point. Time management is the key to effective energy management. Remember, he says in the very beginning of the book that energy management's not the key. It's actually time management, energy management is the key. It's not time management, where most people are focused on time management as an ends, but it actually is just a means to an end. To max out on our energy and our mental source, we need to effectively manage our time. So that's Productivity System 101. And then finally, setting priorities is just another serious key to intermittent recovery. We need to set our priorities and say yes to things and then say no to other things. Just makes a huge difference. So there's also just a lot of studies. I'm not going to get into any of them, but I mean, there are studies that show that the brain, with more use, the brain improves. There's positivity studies on the brain. There's just so many great studies that we can look at, but we are way out of time on this chapter, so let's go ahead and move on to chapter 7.